So we see the sovereignty there. One of the things that's really striking, you notice the kind of things I'm emphasizing so far are the things everybody'd agree on in Revelation, which is one of my burdens when I talk about Revelation and I teach it, is so often everybody wants to focus on where we disagree, which is fine. There are disagreements out there. But we agree on most things in the book, right? For example, this amazing Christology in the book. Jesus rules the kings of the earth. Jesus is the glorious Son of Man. But I mean, again, you're with me on this, but I want to show you that because, see, it's just, Revelation is all about hermeneutics too, isn't it? So here's the Son of Man. He sees him in a vision. He's dressed in a robe with a golden sash wrapped around his chest. Well, I want to suggest to you, this is not a literal, this is apocalyptic. This is not a literal passage. This isn't what Jesus looks like. He doesn't really have a double-edged sword in his mouth. By the way, that would cut your mouth up a lot, you know? If you have a literal sword in your mouth, of course it's symbolism, isn't it? That's priestly language. The hair of his head was white as wool, white like snow. It's not as if we see Jesus, his hair will be white, right? That's not the point of the passage. Because in Daniel 7, this is another thing John does. These are the things that fascinate me in the book more than the things we disagree on or argue about as evangelicals, is when you look at Daniel 7, who has the white hair? The Ancient of Days, right? The Son of Man comes to the Ancient of Days, and it's the Ancient of Days who has the white hair. John tweaks it and says, the Son of Man has the white hair. Well, you could say, sorry, John didn't know Daniel very well, I guess, right? He forgot which one had the white hair in the vision, right? Or John's saying what? He's equal with Yahweh. He's equal with Yahweh. He's fully God. He has white hair too. That's what he's saying, right? He's as pure and ancient as God. His eyes are like a fiery flame. He sees everything. That's the symbol, right? His feet were like fine bronze as it is fired in a furnace. This one's hard, so I don't think he really has bronze feet, right? Literally. So it's apocalyptic language. But what do you do with bronze feet? You stomp on your enemies. That's how I understand it. You stomp on them. You destroy them. And his voice is like the sound of cascading waters. He's so glorious when John sees him, he faints straight away. Sometimes people say, I'd really like to see Jesus or God or an angel. They don't know what they're talking about, right? Jesus says, I am the first and I am the last. That's what Yahweh says in Isaiah. So, if a Jehovah's Witness wonders, hey, is Jesus God? Hey, it's right here. Just take him to Isaiah 44:6. God says, I'm the first and the last. Jesus says that. Case closed. I was dead and I'm alive. I have the keys of death and Hades. I control death. Isn't that comforting? I mean, it can be hard to die. Maybe very hard to die. But he has the keys. He'll unlock that. We're out. The beginning of the creation of God, either that means he's the beginning of the new creation, Greg Beale, or that means he's sovereign over the physical creation. I'm not quite sure which one I think is right yet. Either way, it doesn't mean Jesus is a creature. Either he's the beginning of the new creation as the resurrected one, right? Or he's sovereign over creation. He's worthy. We saw that passage. We saw this about who he is. I love this one. Hide us from the presence of him on the throne and the wrath of the Lamb. He's put on the same level as God, right? Hide us from the presence of God and hide us from the wrath of the Lamb. Lambs aren't wrathful. They're nice, cuddly creatures. This lamb isn't, right? He's fierce. Salvation to our God and to the Lamb. Together, right? Same level. Oh, I love this one as well. The Lamb in the midst of the throne will be their shepherd. Lambs aren't shepherds. Lambs are sheep, right? This is apocalyptic. Lambs aren't shepherds. This lamb is, right? The Lord is my shepherd. The Lamb is my shepherd. Jesus is God. He's the shepherd of the sheep. Jesus will rule the world with a rod of iron, Psalm 2. Jesus is the Word of God. Jesus is King of kings and Lord of lords, so forth and so on. 21:22, what will it be like in the new creation? No temple, for the Lord and the Lamb are the temple, put on the same level. No light, for illuminated by God's glory, and its lamp is the Lamb. God's glory and the Lamb. The river of water life comes from the throne of God and the Lamb. The throne of God and the Lamb is in it. So, man, it's so clear, isn't it? The high Christology of this book. So, that's one of the things we want to preach and teach. Jesus Christ is glorious and great, isn't he? And Jesus' death is key in the book. We talked about that in chapter 5. We also see it in chapter 7. Who are those who have come out of the great tribulation? It's those who washed their robes and they made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Now, chapter 12 is a very controversial chapter. When Satan is thrown out of heaven, when he fights with Michael, right? So how do we understand that chapter? Some people understand it to be the fall of Satan from at the beginning of creation. Some understand it to take place at the end of history. I think he's talking about the cross. When was Satan defeated? When was Satan defeated? The link he draws in the chapter is they conquered him through the blood of the Lamb. So I think what he's saying in chapter 12, obviously this is disputed, but when was Satan defeated? When was he cast out of heaven? By which he means, I don't think his focus is on physical locality, he means Satan has no ground to accuse us anymore. There is therefore no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Who will bring a charge against God's elect? God is the one who justifies. Who is the one who condemned? Christ Jesus died. He's raised. He sits at the right hand of God. He intercedes for us. Revelation 12 is saying nothing different from what we see in the rest of the New Testament. Satan has no ground to charge us because Jesus Christ is crucified and risen. So that's how I understand chapter 12. The cross, what's the key to victory? The blood of the Lamb. It's the cross. That's the key to victory. Of course, he talks a lot about the suffering of believers, doesn't he? Believers will suffer. We see all kinds of examples of people being put to death. People interpret these passages all different ways, don't they? But we know, one thing we all know is believers will suffer. The church at Smyrna, the first and the last, right? Jesus. He was dead and he came to life. Why are those things said? Because he's going to say, I know your affliction and poverty, but you are rich. I know the slander of those who say they are Jews and they're not, but they're a synagogue of Satan. That's not anti-Semitism, by the way. Some people say, well, that's anti-Semitic. But remember, he's not saying we ought to hate Jews. He's simply saying, look, probably the Jews are contributing to the Christians' persecution. The Jews are probably going to the Roman authorities and saying, look, the Christians, they're not part of us. They're not a legal religion. You go ahead, do whatever you want to them. He's not saying hate them. He's just saying, don't think they're the people of God. They're not God's synagogue. You are. Don't be afraid of what you're about to suffer. Look, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison to test you, and you will experience affliction for 10 days. Be faithful to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. So big decision here. Interpretively, I was taught at one point, look, you'll be in prison for exactly 10 days, then you'll get out, and then it'll be okay. I don't think that's what John's saying. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I think as we saw with seven spirits, the number 10 is symbolic. Why does he use the word 10? Short. And I don't think he's saying you're going to get out, because he says, you got to be ready to die. I don't think he's saying, be ready to die, but you won't. I think he's saying, your affliction. So this is how you preach this passage, right? Your affliction, believer, is short. Even if you die. Be ready. Be ready. I'm going to give you the crown of life after you suffer. You might die. Some of you are going to die. Some of them were dying, right? This is written to churches in the first century. First, it wasn't written to us. It was written to them. And he's saying to this church, be ready to die. Your affliction is short. You know, Peter says this twice, right? 1 Peter 1, 1 Peter 5. Your affliction's a little affliction. By little there Peter means this life. This life. It's very similar to what we find elsewhere in the New Testament. I think that's what he means there. So, what's the message of this book? You got to overcome, right? You got to hang on to the end. If you overcome, you'll eat that tree of life in paradise, which now I recognize probably some in here disagree with me. I think that's just a picture. I don't think there's any literal tree there. I think it's just a way of saying you get eternal life. You're going to not be injured by the second death. You're not going to go to hell. You're going to have the hidden manna. I don't think there's literally hidden manna up there. I think it's a way of saying you're going to eat the bread of life. You're going to get the white stone. In that culture, they used a stone to get into things. And here's your entrance ticket. You're going to get in. You're going to make it. You're going to have white garments. I don't think we'll literally have white garments, but you're pure, right? You're going to get in. If you overcome. They overcame Satan by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony. So, here's a huge party in the ways, right? 144,000. I just recognize good people disagree on this. The 144,000 sealed by God from 12 tribes of Israel. I don't understand this to refer to the Jews. I understand this to refer to the church. So I understand this to refer to the people of God. Why do I think that? Well, first, I think numbers are symbolic. 12 times 12 times 1,000. That's a symbolic number. Second, the church is the new Israel. The Jews are the synagogue of Satan. He says that twice. Third, this list is unlike any other list. The tribe of Dan is omitted. The tribe of Joseph is named twice. Fourth, the 10 tribes by now are lost forever. Nobody knows what tribes they are. You could say, well, the tribes are known to God. But then what does it really mean to say there's 144,000 literally unless God gives a special revelation of which tribe they're in? But furthermore, all the Jews have intermarried so much they've lost their tribal structure, right? They've lost their tribal structure entirely. I don't even know what that would mean. Fourth, fifth, the writing on their foreheads is symbolic. It's not a literal writing on their foreheads. The writing on the forehead signifies that they belong to God. Sixth, they don't really or literally play. Some people are really worried about playing harps in heaven. Actually, I would love to learn how to play a harp. And I guess if God had us do that for all eternity, it'd be fun, right? But I don't think that's literal language that we're all going to literally be playing harps in heaven, but it's a way of talking about incredible joy. I love that strumming of the harp. That's beautiful, right? Well, I think that's a picture of the new life that's coming. They're purchased from men as first fruits to God and to the Lamb. They're not defiled with women because they're virgins. I just want to say, hello, that's symbolic. Because having sex with women doesn't defile you if you're married. And he says they're not defiled with women because they're virgins. He doesn't say they're good husbands and wives. They're virgins. But he means they're spiritual virgins. He's picking up on the Old Testament, isn't he? In the Old Testament, Israel is engaged only to God, right? So the language is symbolic. The 144,000, they belong entirely to God. No lie is found in their mouth. They are blameless. So that's how I take this passage. My argument is the 144,000, that's you and me. It's all Christians. That's our story. That's not about somebody else in the future. That's not about the Jehovah's Witnesses, all the different views that are out there. Of course, I could be wrong, but here's something I want to say. I saw an angel, and the angel cried out. And he says, I heard the number of those who were sealed. I was told about the lion. I heard the number of those who were sealed. But when I looked, I saw an uncountable multitude. I heard about a lion, and I saw a lamb. I heard 144,000. I saw an uncountable multitude. It's the same group, I argue. It's the same group. Who can, so I think this is a gospel message. Who is able to stand when God's wrath comes on the last day? Those who are sealed. That's who. Those who are sealed. They're the ones who can stand. Who's going to withstand God's wrath? So my argument is this is a great passage to preach today. Those who are going to stand are those who are sealed. And it's actually 144,000 is a symbolic number. It's an uncountable number. And they are praising God. They're praising God and they're praising Him. They came out of the Great Tribulation, I believe. So, the longer I go, the more I reveal myself. I believe the Great Tribulation is the whole time from the resurrection to the second coming. Okay? So that's every Christian is in the Great Tribulation. The tribulation is this present evil age, I would argue. They washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. For this reason, they're in heaven, right? They're before the throne of God. And they serve Him day and night in His temple. There is no temple there. It's symbolic of His presence. The one seated on the throne will shelter them. They will no longer hunger. They will no longer thirst. That's heaven, right? The sun will no longer strike them, nor will any scorching heat. For the Lamb who is at the center of the throne will shepherd them. He will guide them to the springs of the waters of life, and God will wipe every tear from their eye. Well, where's that in Revelation? It's in the new creation, right? He will wipe every tear from their eyes. That's the new creation. So what's he saying in these chapters? Christian, how do you escape the wrath of God? Radical new idea. If you're sealed through the cross, but you're going to suffer. And some of you are going to die. But at the end, you'll be in the new creation. Not so unusual. Not such a shocking message. My argument is Revelation is not so different from what we read in the rest of the New Testament. It's clothed in different imagery, but saying basically the same things. So, let's see, what else should I talk about? Time's going by. What should I talk about? So many things. Okay. Oh, Revelation 20. First, I want to talk about the new creation, okay? But, okay, I'm running out of time, so I just got to say some things. It really helps just to scroll through, pretending I'm doing things. Well, there goes that. So, but I'm actually trying to find something, and now I can't find it. Yeah, well, I can't find it, so I'm just going to say it. It's somewhere in my book anyway, right? I understand the measuring of the temple, so you got to explain, because I understand the measuring of the temple in chapter 11 to refer to the church. We're God's temple. The measuring of the temple means the church is protected by God. I understand the 1,260 days, the 3.5 years, the 42 months. Does he put it another way? Did I miss something? 42 months, 1,260 days. Times and half a time. Yeah, there we go. That's all the same period, right? I understand that to be symbolic of the whole period from the resurrection to the second coming. So I think we're in that period. I think that's not a story about people for 3.5 years, literally. Numbers, and we've already seen numbers are used symbolically here. I think it refers to the whole period. We live in that period. Why does he pick 3.5 years? Because it's the bad time. It's the bad time of life on earth. It's the time of suffering before the consummation. So I think the two witnesses are symbolic of the church. And fire doesn't literally come out of their mouth. Fire signifies judgment. So these are ways of saying, what is the church doing during this present age? It's prophesying judgment and salvation. But finally, the church, like the two witnesses, will be vindicated in the present age. So that's really quick. I say that because I want to talk a little bit about the new creation, then I'll say something about the millennium. And then I'll open it up for anything you want to say. I mean, we could talk forever, couldn't we? The new heaven and the new earth. God's glory is in the city. This is heaven, right? This is the new creation. It has the beauty of a jasper stone. Now, I don't think, C.S. Lewis says, anybody who knows how to read literature knows this language isn't literal. Maybe that's a little bit snarky, but I think it's true that it's not literal language. I don't think there's a literal city made of gold, but some people do, of course. But he's describing the indescribable, the new creation. It's as beautiful as a jasper stone. It has a high wall. You're safe. High walls wouldn't work too well today. Just bomb them, right? Here come the bombers. High wall, no help. But in the ancient world, he uses the language of his day. It has 12 gates with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, 12 foundation stones with the names of the 12 apostles. One people of God, founded on the apostles, right? The city is measured as 12,000 stadia. 12,000. 12 times 1,000. Symbolic. The city is literally 1,500 miles. I think that's John's way of saying, I'm speaking symbolically. The wall is 144 cubits, 12 times 12. The wall, now, is that talking about the height of the wall or the thickness? Hard to be sure. Either way, you're secure, right? The wall is made of jasper, again, the city of gold, various gems, the streets of gold. No temple, for the Lord and the Lamb are the temple. No light, for illumined by God's glory, and its lamp is the Lamb. The nations bring their glory into it. Every good and beautiful thing will be in this city. Every good and beautiful thing from this life. My daughter asked me when she was very young about our dog Scamper, and she said, will Scamper be in heaven? And I said, do you need Scamper to be in heaven to be happy? And she said, I do. And I said, he'll be there. By which I meant, she was too young to fully understand what I was saying. Anything you need to be happy will be there, maybe in a new way. But Scamper will be there. So, actually, I'm hoping he's not. No, I'm kidding. I love Scamper. My daughter would kill me if she heard me even joke about that. So, the gates are never closed. Hey, why build this really great wall and keep the gates open? That's ridiculous. You don't do that. That's not safe. It's a symbol. The high wall means you're safe. The gates being open means you're safe too. You don't need to close it. There's a tree of life for healing for the nations. You don't need healing in heaven. It's a symbol, right? You don't have to go like, I'm getting kind of sick here. Need a little stuff from the tree of life. I've gotten a cold in heaven. You're not going to get colds in heaven. It's going to be fine. Okay, so that's new creation, beautiful, wonderful. What about the millennium? My first question is there actually a passage about the millennium in Revelation? I don't remember one. I'm kidding. That's a joke. You're like, what is he talking about? So what is my view on the millennium? First of all, I'd say, now, just understand what I'm saying here. I already said this in this class, right? I don't know. I don't know what I think of the millennium. But first of all, it's not that important to me. Because most Christians like to discuss the millennium, but the millennium's a short period of time, and then there's eternity. It's like the Christians to me who talk about rewards, and then they're like, yeah, we're saved. But, what about the rewards? That's exciting. But the millennium, whatever the millennium is, it's temporary. It doesn't last forever. I'm more interested in the forever. And honestly, in a lot of evangelicals, they're more interested in the millennium than the forever. And that's weird. That's wrong. So, is it pre-mill or a-mill or post-mill? Well, I just throw post-mill out. I just don't see any grounding for that. I've been most of my life I was pre-mill. I was a strong pre-mill. A student told me, which I forgot about this, I forget about everything I do. He told me that in the late 80s, he came in and told me he was amill, and I reproved him strongly. I don't remember doing that. But he said I did. So I believe him. I think there are great arguments for pre-mill. The resurrection argument is a great argument. It's the first resurrection, which referring to a physical resurrection. The binding of Satan argument, that's a great argument for pre-mill as well. I think that very well could be right. And on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I am pre-mill. But it's Saturday. So Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I'm amill. So, and Sunday, I'm just enjoying the Sabbath rest. So, I've just gone back and forth on this. This is why I don't like to talk about it, because I'm just an unreliable voice. You just make up your mind, and anyway. But I slightly prefer amill because I feel like the way I understand the rest of Revelation fits with amill. My symbolic reading of the book as a whole. Secondly, I don't see premillennialism taught elsewhere in Scripture. I understand all the alleged millennial passages in the Old Testament, Isaiah 60, Ezekiel 40 through 48. They're in the new creation. They're not in the millennium passage. So I think that's a problem for pre-mill. Revelation is an apocalyptic book. It's not easy to understand. I don't want to base my understanding of a doctrine on a book like Revelation that is not as simple to interpret. Fourthly, I think with Meredith Kline, that the first resurrection is spiritual and the second resurrection is physical, just as the first death is physical and the second death is eternal. So I think there's an implied parallelism. The first resurrection, spiritual, second resurrection, physical, first death, physical, second death is eternal. So we have 5 minutes left. I gotta let you say something. You know, you can say anything. Raise a question, disagree with me. I mean, I'm fine. Just make up your own mind on the millennium. If it's pre-mill, I'm so happy, you know? Honestly, I'm happiest of all if it's post-mill. That's what I want to be. I want to be post-mill. What?
What's your second choice?
What's my second choice? Hey, I would love to believe in the pre-trib rapture, but I don't believe in that at all. But I'd love to. And I hope I'm wrong. Oh, I pray I'm wrong. That would be so great.
So what's the argument for figuring out if Revelation is apocalyptic versus just straight prophecy? And how do you figure out what it truly is?
Well, now, excuse my ignorance here, so you can come back to me. I don't know of anybody who doesn't think it's apocalyptic. In the literature I'm reading, everybody agrees it's apocalyptic. I mean, you compare it to 1st Enoch, right? 4th Ezra. You look at the other apocalyptic books, it's of the same genre. So I'm not aware of people out there saying it's not apocalyptic at all.
I think some of the professors here
Would say it's not apocalyptic at all.
No, they
Well,
would say,
with,
they would say it's not at all, but the main genre would be prophecy that identifies itself as a prophecy by
Yeah.
John. And the prophetic nature of the book is kind of the main genre of it.
Yeah, I would agree with George Ladd. He wrote an article called "Why Not Prophecy Apocalyptic?" I think it's thoroughly imbued with both. Revelation has letters, and then it's prophecy and apocalyptic. So yeah, I'd have to see a lot more. It does. I think, given the symbolism, even the texts we've looked at today, to take that Son of Man vision as a literal vision, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. So maybe you're not saying it's taken literally, but I think it's just so clear the language is highly symbolic. Does he really have a double-edged sword in his mouth? I don't think anybody thinks that. I think that's kind of apocalyptic symbolism, that kind of language. Yeah.
First of all, there's a comment. If you want to figure out what most of TMS generally has said about these things, Michael Flock, VLKCH, is probably your guy.
Okay. Did he write a commentary on Revelation?
I
He did a
He
biblical
wrote a
theology.
biblical theology.
Okay.
Question though, you alluded in Romans to a future for ethnic Israel. Do you see any of that in Revelation elaborated on, or what are just your general thoughts on that?
No, I don't. I don't see Revelation discussing that at all. I see a future salvation for ethnic Israel, but no special place in a millennium. Even if I'm pre-mill, when I was historic pre-mill, I'd see a future salvation for ethnic Israel, but no special rule in a millennial kingdom. So I'd be, if I'm pre-mill, I'm historic pre-mill, like, like the early, some of the early church fathers. Yeah. Yes.
I listened to you as you preached through Revelation. Not all of it, just I remember listening to Revelation 20. I don't know how many years ago it was.
That was about 12 years ago, 13.
Okay.
Remember, I'm very unstable.
Right.
You know,
So,
I need counseling.
So I'm just
Yeah.
wondering today how you feel about.
You're a good counselor. How are you feeling? That's a good way to start.
Do you think that the casting down of Satan in Revelation 12, as you mentioned earlier, you said it's at the cross. Do you think that's the same event as the Satan being thrown into the abyss in Revelation 20?
Yeah, I do, because I think it's symbolic in both passages. That's where I lean. Yeah, but that's. So when I preached that, and then Sam Storms wrote me like a super duper long email on how silly I was. And actually, I didn't follow him at the time, but Sam has slowly persuaded me on that. Yeah.
So I guess just the argument you made for that view before, verse 10, most naturally reads the devil is thrown into the place where the beast and the false prophet already were. I think, to me, that's the verse to deal with or whatever. So how do you see that now?
So what argument are you making, that they're already there?
Right.
Or is that the argument you're making, or it's a different locale? Or both?
So I was referencing an argument you had made for premillennial view of Revelation.
Yes.
Before.
So I would just say what Sam said. Sam said, look, Tom, they use different images to convey the same reality. You ought not to press the fact that in one he's thrown to the earth and the other into the abyss. They are just two different ways of conveying the notion that he's removed from his previous, exercise of rule. They're two different ways of describing the same reality. So I think I would lean towards that explanation. Yeah. So then again, that depends on how apocalyptic it is. Yeah.
Because in 19, it says that he took the false prophet and the beast and threw them in the lake of fire. And in 20, that when Satan's been put in the lake of fire, the false prophet and the beast were already there.
Well, that's why I asked you about that, because the text doesn't actually give the time frame. So many people argue, like Fowler White, that what we have in chapter 20 is a recapitulation and then a focus in chapter 20 on Satan. So it's the same event told from another perspective, and you ought not to read that chronologically, but as a repristination.
So 19 and 20 is a
It's the same event told from, at least the part about the judgment, right? Is it the same event told from two different perspectives? So you should read at least Fowler White's two articles on recapitulation.